I'm now delighted to introduce Dr. John Hu, who is an experienced research academic with specialist interests in the areas of corporate governance and transparency. John, who has worked as an academic in several universities, including City in Hong Kong and Warwick in the UK, will be joining our school at Manchester Metropolitan University in the coming January. As a result, this is also the perfect occasion to welcome our new colleague here in Manchester. John will present a case study entitled Performance-Based Remuneration as a Corporate Governance Problem. So the case of Thomas Cook. So John, please come. The floor is yours.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Costantino, and thank you for inviting me to this conference. And I'm very delighted and honored to present before this panel. Now, what I want to talk for the next 10 minutes or so is to examine why performance-based remunerations in modern public companies is actually a corporate governance problem rather than a solution. And I will present the case of Thomas Cook here in the United Kingdom. Now, to start off with, let's start off with some of the basic how Thomas Cook actually collapsed. Now, it was once the largest travel company here in the UK with almost 180 years of history. And all of a sudden, on a day in 2019, it collapsed. Now, what happened was, before it actually collapsed in September 2019, in April and May 2019, the company issued a profit warning. It was a third profit warning in less than a year. And then they cited discounting and higher fuel and hotel costs as the reason. And then in August 2019, Thomas Cook agreed preliminary the main terms of a £900 million rescue package that would have seen a Chinese company taking over its operation and creditors, banks and bondholders acquiring its airline. Now, but what happened was in September 2019, Thomas Cook then tried to seek an additional £200 million in investment in order for the company to safely cross over the winter. But what happened was, all of a sudden, right, the money never came forward. Okay, the £200 million didn't came forward, and eventually ending a 176-year history of the company. Okay, so that was basically the timeline. Okay, so between May 2019 and September 2019. Okay, that's what happened. Now, but let's turn a year before 2019. Now, what happened was, in its accounts which was published in September 2018. Okay, number one, the account contained a 194 page of accounts. Okay, the accounts presented very positive earnings. Okay, several pages before the loss was made clear, and it was only on page 118 of this almost 200-page report that one starts to see the profit and loss. And not until page 122 that one starts to see the weak balance sheet. Okay, so it was almost a 200-page set of account. Okay, it was only after what, page 120 that we start to see problem with this company. Now, what's even more interesting is, right, the company was actually warned by its auditor, Ernst & Young, of its accounting method. It was later reviewed that the company reported pre-tax underlying profits of 250 million in its 2018 financial statement, a figure which was reached after wrote off of 150 million pound in costs as exceptional and one-off. Meanwhile, the operating profit was just 97 million pounds. So in other words, right, they show public they had a profit of 250 million pounds, but in reality, they actually only had a profit of probably no more than 97 million pounds. Now, after it was collapsed, Ernst & Young claimed that it challenged the company's decision and strongly urged the company to be careful over what costs were declared. So in other words, the auditor did warn the company about the dubious accounting methods which they use, And to cut a long story short, what happened was, in the aftermath of the scandal, the Financial Reporting Council eventually announced that it will look at the company affairs and the company accounts conducted by Ernst & Young. Now, what does this corporate governance failure shows? Because what it shows is, right, executive remuneration as a problem rather than a solution. Now, we say that in corporate governance, we say that performance-based remuneration. So you might ask, right, so why are CEOs of public companies paid so much? 2, 3 million or 5 million pounds a year. Now, in corporate governance, the explanation for that is that those kind of remunerations they try to reduce what we call agency problem or agency costs. Yet in the case of Thomas Cook, what we're seeing is that the company, as I mentioned earlier, they use dubious accounting methods to make their profit appear larger. And the reason for that, it was later discovered, was that the senior executives wanted to show the public that they have met the performance target, the financial performance target, in order to justify their own bonus payment. Right, so the senior executive remunerations in this case, right, they will link with companies' financial performance. So there are potential risks that executives use various methods, as illustrated here, to inflate or fabricate financial data to make the company appear more profitable on paper. And this was exactly the technique that was used more than 20 years ago in Enron. Right, so they made the profits look bigger in order to justify their share options and the bonuses. So what are some of the recommendations that I suggest? Now, I think what we need in this country and other countries as well is we need to have a corporate governance mechanism or measures to regulate directors' remunerations more vigorously. Now, for example, in the United States and the Netherlands, there are statutory provisions whereby directors' remunerations would be clawback in cases of misconduct. We don't have that here in the UK. I think we need that. And I think, yeah, so we can examine it later. Is that something that the UK can consider or should consider? So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
So, thank you very much, John. And it was a very interesting presentation, and I was thinking about so many problems that you raise, like when you spoke about the complexity of companies, group accounts, and you said that the main issue was emerging only page 118. So basically hiding in plain sight. And I really think that this is an issue related to asymmetry of information in the corporate world, but also to the thing, basically the fact that corporations are secretive institutions, that we cannot really look at them inside and understand as stakeholders. And there is a very interesting article in the Financial Times that is, I think last week was looking at this issue. And also, although in this case, there was a warning, surprisingly, I can say, from the auditor. You also highlighted the issue that basically there is a lack of adequacy of auditing, external auditing. We know very well why there is this situation of inherent conflict of interest. And it jumped to my mind the collapse of Patisserie Valérie when there was the parliamentary inquiry, and during the inquiry, the auditor basically bluntly affirmed that it was not the duty of the external auditor to identify fraud. So who is the duty of then? That's very interesting. So thank you very much for this. So now.